go.
All right.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Gospel of Comics with your hosts, the Church of Failure and Ayrton McCartney. Like
Once
the
again.
Beatles, as I've been informed. Nope, no copyright claim on that one. You're going to have to definitely get a file for that coming up soon.
Yeah. Let me know what audio file you need for that, and I'll resend it to you.
I don't know. I'll probably just plug in VLC as soon as my boomer ass figures that out. But anyway, welcome everybody to the Gospel of Comics, and today we're going to be talking about Fantastic Four: The End. This was Ayrton's suggestion, so if you want to talk about that for a minute, I'll get the cover pulled up on stream here.
Yeah. So, and first I'm going to say, I apologize to you for not really
You're roboting just a
larger.
little bit. Give me 1 second.
Oh.
Make sure everything's good here. It says our connection's good. So, all right, go ahead. Try again.
Am I coming through now?
Yeah.
Okay. So, as I was saying, yeah, I'm sorry, Church, that I didn't realize it was part of a larger little mini series.
Yeah, let me just interject him explaining this real quick to raise hell for a minute. As a comic completionist, as soon as I found this, I just started digging on it, and I realized that it was part of a 10-year overarching miniseries that started in the X-Men. And we'll get into that, but about 2 pages in, I had seen 3 references for something called the Mutant War, and I'm like, what the fuck is a Mutant War? And I get to digging into it, and I'm like, oh, so there were 3 X-Men trades that I have to read now. They're a Hulk comic book, a miniseries with Wolverine. I mean, come on, man.
Okay, in my defense, I first found this just browsing through the comic book store and read this probably like 10 years ago, and didn't. And I found and I have the Wolverine the End, and I read that one, and I didn't see any, and I didn't notice any tie-in between the two, so I thought it was just like just like a kind of like the What If stories, just kind of like separate, different takes on like the ending of different characters. So I did not realize that they were tied together.
Right. No, I understand. It happens to the best of us, but you're gonna have to do better. That's all I'm saying. You're just gonna have to do better. What do they say?
I'll work on it.
What do they say in gaming culture? Get good.
Do they?
Yeah.
I'm not a gamer, remember?
All right. Anyway.
and N64, baby.
That's right. Fucking boomer here over here. Anyway. How do you want to open this up?
So I think just that opening scene. So what do you have? Okay, so
I just got the main cover pulled up right now, but I figured you might want to talk
cover
about why you wanted to cover this. Like,
oh yeah. I from the first time I read it, however many years ago that is, I just found it a super compelling story. Just kind of raises some interesting philosophical questions and like cultural ideas in my mind, and
like what?
We'll definitely be able to get into it more. But so I guess the main kind of quick background of kind of where we're at time-wise. I don't think they never really mention a year in this, from what I remember, right?
Well, they kind of give you an idea. Like, it's always assumed that Marvel Comics is taking place in current year, and we're about
Yeah.
25, 30 years into the future, maybe even as much as 40. So
Okay.
I think it's generally about 30 years in the future. So we're at this point in time be close to 2037, 2038. So
Okay.
even 20 years in our current future, according to them. But
Okay. So
yeah, I'll go ahead and pull up the first two images we've got pulled, and we can just kind of get straight into it.
yeah.
The first thing that that you kind of learn is that, as always, apparently, and the thing is again, because of the story's origin, I could be completely off base on that, because we already know that Doctor Doom was hurt during the Mutant War that we talked about earlier. As I angrily shake my fist at the children on my lawn not reading the complete storyline of their comics. But we learned that he was injured and basically became Dr. Octopus because of the Mutant War. And now he's gone basically psycho and is just proceeding to whip the shit out of the Fantastic Four like they owe him money.
Yeah, and so do you want to touch on the Mutant War, since I haven't gotten around to reading that part yet?
I'm gonna make you read it all, and we're gonna touch on it in a different episode. That's basically gonna be how I'm gonna punish you for this.
Fair enough. Oh no, I got to read more comic books.
Oh yeah, right. Like, but no, I think that'll be an interesting enough story. We can just, like, from what I understand of it, from what little bit I've gotten into so far, basically House of M happened, but it was a mutant war, and there are 3 trades worth of X-Men that we'll go through for an episode, kind of like we did Lock and Key. We'll just condense it down and give the hard and dirty story of it, but.
Okay.
But, from what I understand, basically the mutants are all dead. So that's why the only heroes we get in this book are the Inhumans, the Avengers, and the Fantastic Four.
All right. Yeah, so it cuts from this quick kind of battle between the Fantastic Four and Dr. Octopus Doom.
Yeah. Octo Doom. I like that.
And do you have that shot of their children in the battle?
No, but let's just go ahead and get that out of the way. Basically, what's happened is we see Reed talking to She-Hulk, who is now like a therapist, and she essentially is trying to console him because his children are dead. He assumes that his children died in that fight with Doctor Doom, and this is taking kind of a hard case on him, and we learn later on in this flash forward that he's reclused himself on basically a giant space asteroid, where he's essentially just locked himself away into his work, right?
Yeah.
So.
And
yeah, go ahead.
So I was going to say, so part of the reason, and this is kind of something I find interesting about it, is at this point Reed has developed the Methuselah treatment.
Yeah.
Is that what's called? Yeah.
Yeah, that's what's allowing all these heroes to not age. And most 99.9% of the heroes we encounter have taken it.
Yeah, and part of taking that treatment is because this extended life cycle is kind of psychological evaluation, and also at the same time, his technology has basically turned Earth into utopia. There's no more crime, so She-Hulk doesn't have to be a lawyer anymore. So she decided to become a therapist.
Which, I mean...
So, and that's...
Ooh, right, right? I think that's the only thing worse than a lawyer is a therapist.
Yeah, probably. It's close. It's close. It's close. But and that's one of the kind of the interesting one. The first interesting questions that I think the story raises is what kind of would happen to us psychologically and as a species if we could extend our life by another 50 or 100 years. I mean, part of the thing that kind of makes life interesting, at least in my opinion, is the fact that one day we do all die, and so it kind of, I think Reed touches on that. It adds a sense kind of urgency in life, and in my opinion, it kind of is what gives life meaning, is the fact that it is so finite, and I find that a very interesting concept.
I mean,
to bring up.
I don't disagree, but I think at the same time, I mean, we can look at actual everyday society right here and now and answer that question, because, I mean, if you think of even 100 years ago, or, you know, back in the 1900s and 1920s, or even so far back as like the 1800s, the average lifespan of a human being was maybe 50 years, 60 years. So nowadays we're living to like 80, 90 years old, but we're learning that the quality of life at that age is so poor that a lot of people regret staying alive that long. Like, a lot of people feel that reverting back into a form that you're not able to take care of yourself in certain aspects the way you've become accustomed to is more of a detriment than a help. But the thing is the question isn't really about what would happen if we could add that much time back onto our longevity. I think it's the question of what happened if we could stay at our prime that much longer. You know, because that's what the Methuselah treatment is. It's not saying that you're going to live to 150 years old. It's saying that you're going to live to 150 years old as the best you ever were. And that's terrifying.
Yeah.
To me, that's terrifying, because they talk about it in the therapist scene where Jennifer says, "Well, there's too many." She-Hulk, Jennifer Walters, say that there's too many tomorrows. I mean, that's something that I don't know that I could deal with really well. You know, as we talked about this a little bit the other day, but I think privately, but as a man, you have to work on something. You have to have a goal, and when you have a goal, you just put it off too much if you have too many tomorrows. Even Reed Richards, he has so many projects constantly ongoing that his entire group has disbanded. His wife hasn't seen him in over a year. It's been over a month since they spoke, and that's kind of a decent transition into the introduction to the rest of the Fantastic Four, I think. I've got those images up now.
Yeah.
Do you want to kind of touch on that?
Yeah. So. Yeah. So yeah, the Fantastic Four have, for all intents and purposes, disbanded. Johnny is with the Avengers, fighting, like, they call them anarchists, I think, in the story. Kind of in the far reaches of the solar system. Ben, with his family, is on a terraforming project on Mars, and Sue is on Earth. And we should also note, so part of the reason that the Avengers with Johnny are out trying to track down what's left over kind of the criminal element from Earth after they kind of turned it into this utopia is Reed's trying to get Earth and the surrounding solar system into the entire like galactic community, and part of that is like a quarantine kind of waiting period where the entire solar system is cut off. And there's a fact that's not happy about that.
Well, yeah, and I think one thing to comment on about that is the fact that when you're dealing with this quarantine situation, like the utopia exists inside the quarantine. The Kree, the Skrulls, the Shi'ar, all of these alien races, like really, it's just the Inhumans and the humans that are inside this quarantine. I mean, you have your celestial beings that were just outside of Earth, but for the most part, all of the threats that the Avengers are having to face are all considered they're all humanoid of origin, or they're all Earth of origin, you know?
Yeah. So. And I will have to say, I did find it kind of amusing that Thor is in there.
Well,
because he's not technically human.
Well, Thor at certain points in the comic books has been a human that was imbued with the power of Thor. So
true.
And Midgard.
That was always one of those things that kind of didn't always make sense how they kind of explain that with like the nine realms and Asgard, but then like you have this other like whole galactic area.
Right.
Is that ever really explained anywhere? Because I haven't seen.
I'm sure it is, but it never has interested me enough to dig into it, to be completely honest.
Oh, okay.
Because I was a mythology buff growing up.
Okay. Yeah, that was one thing that always confused me, is that kind of like split hierarchy almost.
Right.
But
one thing you can talk about is that from what we can tell at this point, it seems like Johnny is actually the leader of the Avengers, not just a member. Iron Man. We can actually talk about the Avengers for a second, if you don't mind. Just kind of fill everybody in.
No,
what
not
the
at all.
Current roster is in this era. You've got Thor. You've got Captain Marvel. I'm not sure which iteration of Captain Marvel this is. It honestly looks like Felicia Hardy, Black Cat as Captain Marvel. I mean, don't you think?
Yeah, no, I see it.
White hair, black cat mask, and the Captain Marvel skin tight uniform. This is a better Captain Marvel to have in a movie, if you don't mind me saying. But you've also got the Vision and Iron Man, and Iron Man is no longer even remotely human. His consciousness transfers from one suit of armor to the next if it's destroyed. So he's completely become, one with the suit, so to speak. He's no longer even human.
Yeah.
So it makes sense to have this team together, because all of them can actually exist outside of the space airlock without a personal field generator that they talk about later. And
and then you also have Silver Surfer and Enchantress as well.
No, Enchantress is the bad guy in this.
Yeah.
And Silver Surfer, I forgot about him. He's not in the shot that I'm looking. Well, he is, but he's obscured.
Yeah, he's kind of off in the corner.
Yeah.
I thought there was one other person in there too.
I'll look at it real quick. Just
yeah.
One thing I do want to talk about that I'm already starting to kind of see as I go back over this for the third or fourth time. The paneling of this book, of this series, really bothers me. Like, I don't know about you. I'm not a truist in the sense that it has to be the classic square paneling, but there's just not enough divide between the busyness of some of these panels to actually clearly see the art. And I think that takes you away from the story a little bit as you're reading it.
Yeah, there are definitely some parts like the scene you have pulled up right now where it's just it's too clustered and there's way too much going on. They need to clean that up a bit.
Well, let's go ahead
Maybe
and
like
do that transition to the next part of this particular issue, but we can keep going. So no,
yeah, and then
no, go ahead.
I was just gonna touch on the other page you had up with the Thing on Mars.
Oh yeah,
with the Inhumans kind of playing with his kids, and at this point he also kind of feels. What was that? You cut out for a sec.
I can bring that back up for you.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So yeah, you see him here, kind of wrestling around with his kids as the Inhumans kind of come up to see him, and he notes, I think a few pages after this, that he actually feels a kind of a sense of guilt for finally having like kind of the perfect normal life he always wanted after soon Reed lost their children to Doom.
Right.
And
right.
Which would also kind of...
He has everything that Reed and Sue lost, and it makes him feel guilty for that.
Yeah, which even more so kind of plays into the distance between these four characters, along with Reed becoming entirely recluse and focused entirely on his research.
Well, I mean, I think it's to be expected to a certain degree when you create this kind of utopia, when you create this kind of wonderful world where, nobody really has to want for anything.
Yeah.
And nobody really has to like there's no reason to commit crime for profit because you can just have whatever you need.
Right.
And they make mention that a lot of times most of the crime that happens in this situation is just criminals being bored, but I mean, we see here that Alicia Masters, the Thing's wife, who he's had the 3 children with, one of which has been named Yancey for everyone, for everyone to get a little nod and a wink out of. But he's living on Mars with the Inhumans, and they've terraformed the planet, and we'll see kind of the drawback of this later, but he's also got the technology or the magic or the cure or whatever to independently change from human to thing form.
Right.
So that's something that we've never seen before, except for a few like miscellaneous stories. But
and again, that's something else he's always wanted.
Right.
For at the time that this story came out, what, like 40 years of the Fantastic Four being around? I forgot what year this came out in.
It's 2007, and let me do a quick Google foo here. Fantastic Four origin, or what's the word I'm looking for? First issue is 61, so that was 48 years. They're almost 50 years old at this point. And as per usual, this leads me into a couple of tangents. The CIA's in the chat. Hello, CIA. We still have not seen the NSA, but the FBI has been around, so that's all good. We got the glow in the dark guys in the chat here. Just wanted to give them a shout out.
I wouldn't want it any other way.
They keep the terrorists out.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, I forget what I was going to. Oh yeah, the Fantastic Four. Here's a tangent that I kind of want to go on. Before Disney really seized control of Marvel Studios and really looked at the cash cow that they had in front of them. The Fantastic Four have always been a very important and integral part of the Marvel Comics universe. So the fact that they've been basically just dismantled for the movie rights and whatnot being owned by Fox was a tragedy back in 2015. I mean, there was a good 3 to 4
Yeah.
years. There was a good 3 to 4 years where you didn't have an ongoing Fantastic Four series, and now they're trying to bring it
Yeah.
back. But I mean, the people that literally had read Fantastic Four for 20 to 30 years were the ones buying those books, and you took that away from them. You're not going to get that customer back.
Oh no, and especially not with today's climate of the comic book industry.
Oh God, no, not in the costs as well. I mean,
oh yeah,
we see these books, and this was 2007. I think comics were still around, $3 at the time. They've increased $2 in 12 years.
Yeah, which is outrageous. I mean, I could probably dig out my original copies of this and tell you how much I paid for.
Right. And that's not to say that back issues don't end up in quarter bins and whatnot, but the thing about that is that kills comic book stores. Like, it might be nice to go and buy a stack of comic books for $10 and take them home and feel like you got a steal based on the cover price. But what you just did is you just screwed your local comic store. And you didn't do it intentionally, and it's not the customer's fault, but that's the industry that's been met. But I'll shut up about that. Let's kind of get back on track here. We got Sue Storm and Doctor Strange on screen. If you want to kind of start on that, this is his story, everybody. I'm just gonna comment on things he says. I got nothing. I mean, I have things like rants, but we'll get to my final thoughts on this near the end.
Yeah. So I apologize for the sporadicness and not as smooth talking about the story as Church normally gives.
Oh no, you're doing great, man. Like I said, I'll go ahead and kind of spoil it a little bit. I was not the biggest fan of the story. Like, I liked the elements to it. I liked a lot of the story arcs, but I've read this and I've read Earth X, and Earth X did this better.
And now I want to read Earth X.
Oh, you're going to.
You see what you're starting over here with me?
Look, man, we have to have a weekly show. You don't think that I had like 10,000 comic books in mind to read before we started this?
Fair enough. So anyways, we cut to Sue on Earth in the ocean. She's not in Atlantis proper. She's like the slums of Atlantis.
Right.
Like the Detroit of Atlantis. One might say.
Yeah, definitely.
And we have Namor approaching her, which at this point, for all intents and purposes, it's just assumed that her and Reed have kind of split and gone their separate ways.
Right. It
and now, correct me if I'm.
It feels like that was kind of an unspoken statement when he was talking to She-Hulk, but we learn later that that's not the case, because we learn right here that's not the case.
True. But at the same time, it's a little misleading because her and Namor have had troubles in the past.
Well, Namor kidnapped her, for God's sake.
Yeah. Troubles, right? You would classify that as troubles.
Well, I mean, he's like the Pepe Le Pew of Marvel Comics. He's just running around stealing women, running off with them.
Well, see, how I read this initially was her saying that to try and get him to go away. Like, I didn't read it as her being authentic and saying that she still loved Reed.
Oh, well, we'll actually come to we'll figure that out here in a little bit, what that's all about.
Yeah.
You know, it's not. Come on. We will.
Are you boomering something up?
Shut up. If I wanted your opinion, I'd give it to you. Um,
So anyway, she's down in the Detroit Atlantis, kind of digging through kind of archaeological artifacts and kind of exploring in kind of that kind of nod to the kind of the old school Fantastic Four, kind of that adventure exploring sort of deal. And at this point, also it just it's presented as it's just kind of a hobby for her, something to keep her mind off of what happened to their children and with Doom and stuff so many years ago. And Namor kind of blows it off as she's just digging through garbage, which I found fairly amusing. And
well, I mean, she talks about how she's doing later on in this particular set of panels. She talks about how she's doing an archaeological dig for just to keep her mind busy or whatever, and that this is something
yeah,
that she shared with her children. Um, so I mean, we really walk away from this, and this is another problem that I had with that. This is part of what we'll get into later, but we walk away from that thinking this is just something that she's doing to sentimentally bide her time. Really, no different than the way that Reed is holding up in his lab, and Johnny is out with the Fantastic Four, and Ben is just leading a normal life. I mean, this really the first issue, right? And I know we've spent a lot of time on it. We'll probably breeze through the rest of it a little quicker because of just how fast the actual story is. But this is obviously the exposition
yeah,
of it all. One thing that we really see here is that this is really just kind of showing us that all of them are just off doing their own thing to deal with what we saw at the beginning of the story. But
yeah,
then we get the next little shot that I've got brought up here, which is Doctor Strange, and we see that Doctor Strange himself is not one of these one of these people who have taken this Methuselah treatment or whatever. Uh, he he's essentially
and
just old.
yeah, and I believe the part with Reed and She-Hulk touch on that, how there's kind of a group that says it's unnatural and it's breaking kind of the natural order of things, and it's being led by Doctor Strange, and they're a bit of a problem,
Right,
kind of like obnoxious protesters.
but Reed covers for him. But this is the first time we actually
Yeah,
see him, and
yeah,
we see, we initially see just the cloak, that famous Doctor Strange cloak. And you guys will forgive me. It's kind of late, and I've forgotten what the name of that cloak is. But
the cloak of levitation.
yes, but it's basically the favorite character of the Doctor Strange movie. But we see the old Doctor Strange, and we see that it's his daughter is now the Sorcerer Supreme with the Eye of Agamotto and the cloak. So, and that's pretty much where we end off on issue one. So, really, I mean, this is your average fare for comic books. So you got a little bit of fighty. You've got a little bit of you got a lot of exposition, but for as many characters as you get introduced to, I feel like it was done well.
Yeah, yeah. But besides kind of the clutter, like this Doctor Strange panel is another good example. The layout of that again is kind of clunky, and I think a little bit messy. Probably could have been cleaned up a little bit, but it does. Besides that, it does do a good job of kind of giving you an idea from that opening scene of them fighting Doom to kind of like just kind of showcasing kind of your main players in the story,
right?
And kind of seeing like where they are, and you kind of get a sense, or at least you think you get a sense of kind of where each of them are psychologically and emotionally after that event with Doom.
Right, and I think the worst of it all is really for Reed Richards. You know, honestly,
Yeah.
you know his mental state it's really left to us to assume that his mental state is just garbage.
Right.
You know, so
Now I don't know what
that'll
you're pulling up next.
that'll be issue 2. That's usually how that goes.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I meant what scene you're pulling up next.
but we start off in issue 2 here. I'll pull up the cover real quick first.
Okay.
My screen should still be shared, right?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
There's a slight delay on it. It takes a sec. It gets kind of blurry when you put something new up, and then it clears up.
Okay. Yeah. We'll just open up with the cover for issue 2 here. And you're right. I missed the Silver Surfer and the Avengers, but I really just wanted to talk about how Tony Stark's Iron Man armor was now like a sentient being. But
Yeah.
the first couple of images we're gonna pull up is gonna be one of my favorites from this, and that's the Kid Bug Squad.
yeah, that was good. So now, so the first time I read this, and going back and rereading it, it always takes me a second to realize the guy with the goatee and like that purple and blue outfit is Peter Parker.
Right. You want to think that's Doctor Strange or somebody,
right? Yeah, exactly. It always takes me a second.
So,
but
yeah, that's
so. Go ahead.
No, that's just one of the funniest scenes because Iron Man's here, but he's about to transfer back to where the Avengers are. He's here talking to, Peter Parker and Hank Pym and the Hulk and several other heroes about stuff because, Reed Richards can't be there. But the fact is that halfway through this meeting, he has to transfer back because of an issue going on with the Avengers. But the funniest part of it is when he transfers back, his armor just autopilots back to where it's at. But then the Vision's like, "Are you broken? Because you came back laughing at something called Bug Squad."
Yeah, that was great, and I will have to say there will be a slight tie-in to the Bug Squad at the end of this that I thought was kind of amusing as well.
Yeah. Well, the overarching theme that this book takes a turn to it's interesting to say the least. But after this meeting, and once Tony gets back to the Avengers, we also see Ben Grimm in his human form going through a museum with his kids, and he's not wearing any Fantastic Four apparel. He's just looking like a normal human. And I think I do this every episode, but let's just talk about the way that politics were portrayed in the early 2000s opposed to the way they are now. Because we have an honest to God case of racism against a white dude.
We do. and legitimate racist because it's inhuman prejudice against regular humans.
Well, that's speciesist, wouldn't it be?
And I guess maybe, I don't know. I would say anyways.
But that's we come to find out in this part that that's a reason that some of the Inhumans always wear masks. Like Black Bolt always wears a mask even though he looks like a human. It's not because of their identity, it's because of their shame of looking too much like an ordinary human. And I just kind of find that fascinating that the Thing, even though he seems so content at his home, is still a monster, or is still shunned in his world for looking too human now.
Right.
But
And
he's highly regarded as the thing. I thought that was kind of an interesting part.
yeah, I found that super interesting too. And it's and now so then humans I haven't actually read really I can't say any like straight up Inhumans comics, just like kind of just ones where they show up in other stories.
Is that your way of saying you want me to flex a little bit real quick?
Well, yeah, I was gonna I was gonna I was gonna ask if those are common themes in some of the Inhuman comic books, like kind of that prejudice against regular humanity.
Actually, it's kind of backwards. Usually the Inhumans are constantly running. I mean, they're like a discount version of the mutants. So
Okay.
usually the Inhumans are always running away from society. Like they lived on the moon for a while, like you saw in World War Hulk.
Yeah.
Their original colony on Earth was undiscoverable by humans for the most part. The Fantastic Four stumbled in there for a while, but
Yeah.
I mean, for the most part, the Inhumans are. I mean, they've always been more reclusive than offensive or aggressive. There's always been a few, offshoots led by Maximus, Black Bolt's brother, who were all about conquering the Earth because we were superior. Several
Yeah.
arcs have led to Black Bolt releasing a worldwide Terrigen Mist, which this actually ties back into Earth X. But Black Bolt releases like a Terrigen Mist and awakens all the latent Inhumans, just of his, I don't know, just on Earth. But that's kind of a theme that you kind of have going on sometimes.
Okay.
So
yeah, I was curious about how prevalent that was.
It's actually a little less common than you would assume, given their massive amounts of powers. But
Okay.
I don't have as many scenes from these books, which is why I think we'll get through them a lot faster because there's a lot of action. There's basically a fight in every issue between the Avengers and this mysterious enemy that just reduces to goop when they're defeated. And you see that these enemies seep on board of the Fantastic Four ship, and Nick Fury, White Nick Fury, he makes a point of trying to explain that these are all diversions. These are all just diversion tactics from an unseen enemy who they don't know what the actual end goal is. And
right
at this point, I mean, really, it's just a lot of homages that we're seeing. Like they're all the enemies that are portrayed that have been fake are really just kind of callbacks to, excuse me, to some of the Fantastic Four's prior encounters and whatnot.
Now, and just
go ahead.
Go. Oh, I went and pulled up. There's one line the first time the Avengers encounter this goop from Thor that I also thought was fairly amusing. So when they first start melting, naturally, the Human Torch thinks it's because of him, right? And then Thor goes, "Thy fiery power be not the cause, Human Torch."
Yeah,
and I don't know why that just made me laugh.
Well, this is old school Thor. Like a lot of people don't realize Thor is not Chris Hemsworth.
Right.
The Thor in the comics literally talked like that. He literally had a medieval speech pattern. And it was hilarious because it just broke. It broke the tension of everything.
But yeah, I found that line, and then it cuts to Vision saying affirmative. Thor's correct, and just those Just those different ways of talking between Vision, Thor, and the Human Torch, like that. I just found that ridiculously entertaining for whatever reason.
It makes you chuckle.
Yeah, it's so goofy and campy, and I love it. And this is part of why I like comic books, because they're just so weird.
Yeah, you don't get stuff like this anymore. Like it's all entirely too serious sometimes.
Yeah, or like they try too hard to be funny, and it's just like awkward.
Right.
See, like that's circumstantially funny, just those three characters interacting that way, whereas like kind of the forced humor they try to put in modern day comic books, and it's just dumb. It reads like a middle schooler trying to write comedy.
Well, we this is just issue 2, so we get the Avengers. You know, after that encounter, we get them kind of regrouping with Fury, and Fury's like, okay, well, that was obviously a diversion, so we need to figure out what's going on. So everybody talks to everybody else, and you kind of get a lot more of a backstory of what's going on, and you know the trajectory of this all has to do with the quarantine. That's why we talked about it so much in the first part of it. But something has broken through the quarantine, and a signal has gone through to Mars. So this pretty much puts Johnny Storm and the Avengers on course to Mars to find Ben Grimm, and that's kind of a common thing.
And it should be.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, that's kind of a common thing. You get the Human Torch and the Thing, and they are once the Fantastic Four are broken up or for any reason are separated. Those two are always kind of like the core team when they're not all together.
Yeah.
You know, Johnny Storm and the Thing, they pull the short straw a lot in these stories. Even in World War Hulk, they're like, yeah, we got some kid issues to deal with, so why don't you guys go fight the Hulk and we'll stay home? And I'm just like, man, and I mean, would quit the team too.
To be fair, I mean, to be fair though, like the two of them are the real fighters out of the four of them.
Well, yeah, but I mean, they're also dumb enough to say, yes, we'll go fight the Hulk. I mean, they need Reed Richards there.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's been instances where the Hulk and the Thing fight just for the fun of it, right?
I don't think anybody fights the Hulk for the fun of it.
Well, I know Wolverine has.
Wolverine's not just anybody. Okay.
Like I said, Wolverine fucking with Mr. Fix-It Hulk is one of my favorite things.
We'll
just making him angry just because he feels like it. Yeah, we'll have to talk about that at some point.
We'll have to look at that. Maybe we'll compile a top 10 of the Hulk versus Wolverine instead of just going over the individual issues. We'll just talk about the top 10.
That could be fun.
Because I'm sure they fought more than 10 times.
Oh, yeah. But so what I was going to say, I don't think we mentioned this, is the quarantine part of that is no transmissions can come in or out of our solar system, and hyperspace like doesn't work entering or exiting it somehow.
Right.
So it's kind of a big deal that the signal got through.
Yeah. Well, you know, and that put Johnny Storm on the track to the Human Torch, and then, you know, we also see in the next couple of pages at the end of the book, that She-Hulk is apparently still on board the asteroid, even though she was supposedly left last issue. And then the biggest oh shit moment in Marvel Comics happened, and the Watcher appears.
Which is never a good sign
Not
in
for
Marvel Comics.
not for anyone he's watching. No.
Right.
When the Watcher shows up, there's usually some shit about to hit the fan. But that's pretty much where we leave off. Is one of the Watchers being like, "Uatu, you know better than to interfere. Just watch."
We know you've interfered like 1,200 times in the past, but don't think about it this time.
Yeah, we actually don't know why we haven't fired you. I do have one last shot from issue 2, one of the ones you sent.
Oh yeah.
And this is when the Human Torch is off towards Mars, and you find out that at this point there's no ship in the solar system that's faster than the Silver Surfer. So Johnny Storm's just hitching a ride.
and again, this scene also makes me laugh. Just him sitting on the front of the surfboard, holding on for dear life as the surfer flies at basically light speed.
Now, another thing that I don't like is everybody's calling him John. The Human Torch's name is not John; it is Johnny.
Yeah, I found that kind of awkward too. I mean, but at the same time, it's like, okay, it's been a few years. Maybe he's trying to grow up. Like he feels like the big adult with the Avengers. He wants them to call him John instead of Johnny, sort of thing.
Maybe,
but
I still don't like it. It's still awful.
But yeah, I bad. But also that main panel at the top, kind of the his flame kind of being sucked in the wake of the surfer. I really like the art of that whole scene too. I just think it just looks really cool.
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing. This is standard fare art for early 2000s comic books. Yeah. This is a quality that we've lost in just our everyday issues. So, I mean, that's kind of a depressing thing for me, I guess. I'm gonna go ahead and pull that back down. But we'll jump into issue 3 real quick, and this is kind of where you pick back up with Sue Storm and Namor. So you open up. Ben Grimm finally arrives on Mars, Johnny Storm arrives on Mars, and Ben Grimm's just out by the pool, and you get kind of your first little bit of a reunion from the Fantastic Four since Reed's alone on his asteroid. All that good stuff.
Yeah, we'll just have to say, what do you think of Johnny's not Fantastic Four costume?
It reminds me of the Phoenix outfit.
Okay. I thought it was a little on the nose.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of the Phoenix outfit, and I'm not sure if the Phoenix Force is part of Johnny Storm, and that's the reason for that. That might be something that, because the Phoenix Force was something that was always associated with a mutant. So that might be something we find out in the actual X-Men The End kind of series or something of that nature. But there might be a reason that he has that costume that's so reminiscent of the Phoenix.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it just looks like Tony Stark designed it.
Oh, you catch on fire, right? We're going to put flames on
it. And make it red.
That's right. Red and yellow.
Oh, man. That's the other scene I forgot to pull from this issue is the food fight.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I didn't pull that one either. But, yeah, there is an amazing food fight that happens because Johnny Storm and the Thing start ripping each other like they always do. So I mean, they pick up like old friends, even though they haven't seen each other in 10 years.
Yeah, I'd say at least.
I mean, so it's not like there's it's not like there's any animosity between any of these people. They've just literally grown their separate ways. So I don't know.
which is I don't know what's like kind of worse for the Fantastic Four, like them just kind of naturally just sort of drifting apart because of these circumstances that they themselves created with this
the lack of conflict.
utopian stuff. Yeah, or if like you were to have like some big conflict between them that kind of split them up. I almost don't know which one would be more tragic.
Well, I mean, we've seen both over
Yeah.
several storylines. It's funny you mentioned that. That's actually kind of the main plot line of Secret Wars 2015, which is one of my favorite stories that I've read in the modern era. But that's because it's a Jonathan Hickman thing, and Jonathan Hickman is an amazing writer. He's actually the writer of East of West that we talked about with Deadman yesterday.
Yeah.
So he talks about how if the I don't want to go too far into this, so just call time on me, but basically 2015 Secret Wars, the Earths are colliding, and the only person who has the willpower to do what's necessary to save some of reality is Doctor Doom. Well, in creating the remnants of realities into a new existence, he eliminates Reed Richards from existence, marries Sue Storm, and they have the children instead of Reed and Sue. So it's Victor Von Doom and Sue Storm. So that's kind of the way that would work out is Reed survives by stowing away on a shuttle. It's very convoluted. We'll have to read that. But it's only 9 issues for the main series. Now the whole arc, the whole shebang is like 251 comics.
Jeez.
So I don't think we'd be able to do that one over a weekend. But
we can do that
about.
if we ever do a 24-hour stream.
Oh Jesus! You think somebody would listen to that? You must be high. But 24-hour fucking stream talking about comic books. Anyway, you shoot over and you've got the Shi'ar.
Yeah, no. Okay, now I'm trying to remember.
Oh, did I go dead air for a minute?
Yeah, for a second.
Okay.
Now this is after that first meeting of like the Galactic Council.
Right. And this is the Kree and the Shi'ar. Like, the reason I picked this scene specifically was because of Ronan the Accuser.
Yeah.
He's he's recognizable now because of the Guardians of the Galaxy movie, but Ronan the Accuser working with the Shi'ar, who are typically good guys that work with the X-Men, but the fact is that they've been shut out of this quarantine, and this just kind of goes to show that everybody that's not inside this paradise utopia that Earth has created and sheltered itself off from, it's just pissed off.
That, and it was the so when you have that first Galactic Council, you have a few of the different races aren't exactly happy that the humans are going to be let into the larger society.
Right. Because they made everything so perfect and kept their technology to themselves and all that noise.
Yeah, and they've beaten them in fights like the Skrulls aren't happy about it.
Right.
In particularly, and they kind of view humanity as kind of annoying pests.
Right. And I don't know, it's very cliche almost that it's us versus them.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, and it could have been that I already was kind of starting to have a little bit of negativity towards the story. Like, don't get me wrong. I mean, it's a compelling story. It just it doesn't feel like at this point you really have any concept of what the fuck is going on.
Yeah, you are kept in the dark for quite a bit of it.
Like it just seems to me in this particular regard that you know at this point you should really kind of have an idea of where the actual conflict is. Like so far we have a lot of conflicts, but we don't know why we have all of it. And I think this comes from being a little bit in the dark about the origin of this story. So I think if we
Yeah,
revisit this on the back of talking about one of the other The End series or the origin of the End series,
yeah.
maybe
It,
we'll have a little bit more to go off of. But it almost feels like this was just a book that was written to meet a yearly quota to keep that story going.
See now, and when I first found and read this story uh, back in high school, I kind of liked the fact that I was kind of kept in the dark, and rereading it for this, it kind of brought back like it kind of kept me on the edge of my seat again, even though I knew what was going to happen. But I remember first reading it like, oh man, like what is going on here, and it compelled me to kind of keep going and wanting to try and figure out what's going on.
Well, then we come to probably one of my definite favorite scene of this book. We have Uatu interfering, which is the thing that he does. Like if this was
Imagine
me,
my shock.
if this was me and this was my job, and I wasn't supposed to do something, and my job knew that I had a penchant for doing, I'd just get fired. Like Uatu is the worst employee in the Marvel universe. Do not let him know company secrets. He will sell them.
But yeah, again, like it shocks anybody that he's interfering.
Right. Well, I mean, he's here to basically ask, Galactus to save humanity, basically, because he knows, and that makes me ask this question. So, you know a little bit about the Watcher, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, when it comes to the Watcher, does he know the future, or is it just his job to watch it unfold? Because if you ask me, he wouldn't know humanity was in danger if he didn't know the future. But the fact that he's asking Galactus for help instead of just going to the humans and by themselves means that he knows that something on a scale that they can't handle is coming. Now, this could just mean that he knows about the coming invasion and they don't, but at the same time, he can't know that they're not prepared for it unless he knows the outcome of it already without Galactus' interference. Am I wrong on that?
Yeah, I mean, he might be able to infer that they're not prepared for the coming threat. I mean, he's a fairly smart character besides his constant insubordination. So, yeah, I don't know. I would just assume he's just deducing that something big is coming and they probably aren't ready for it. That would be my guess, but I could be wrong on that too.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. No, I really love the way Galactus is drawn here, and I really love the fact that these two are just so, what's the word? Just they're barely tolerant of one another. Like the interaction between these two is like the interaction between two siblings and just absolutely cannot stand one another.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a lot of really good character interaction scenes like this throughout this series.
Well, I think it may even just be that these are two of my favorite galactic entities, but this is really the creme de la creme of just I really don't like you, but I need your help.
Yeah, like
can you
I
throw a
don't
dog
like
a
you,
bone
you don't
here?
like me, but yeah, no. What's the Watcher's quote to him that he says to convince him?
Oh, the test Galactus is whether you are worthy of that primitive species, not that they are worthy
Right.
of you,
Yeah.
kind of thing. Like he's just like, look, these guys that are so far beneath you that you consider them ants, they've kicked your ass like so many times, and they've spared you every time. The question isn't, are they worthy of your help? The question is, are you worthy of them?
Right.
And
And which is just perfect.
he doesn't even wait for a response. He just stands there and walks off. And Galactus is just standing there like, that son of a bitch.
it's it's the it's the galactic version of I double dog dare you.
Right. You can't triple stamp a double stamp. Anyway, to the end of the book, I just wanted to pull this up. It's not very important to the story, but the Inhumans and the Human Torch and the Thing have all gotten together to go figure out what the fuck's going on, and they find this Kree sentry who's supposed to be stealthy and failing miserably because it's a fucking sentinel in the middle of Mars. It's a little out of place. You don't really see purple and blue robots every day. I just want to talk about what the similarities between the color scheme and the design of this, and is it just because it's a giant robot that this and the X-Men Sentinel look so alike, or is this again something we're going to see as a product of like this mutant war where there's a reason that it looks so much like a Sentinel? That's
Yeah.
one of the things that it does put points in this book's favor, is because I don't understand a lot of these things, so it does make me curious and make me want to go read other comics, which to me makes this a successful story.
Right.
I mean, maybe not the
Yeah.
best story, but it's a successful story. I guess we can just jump into issue 4 after that, unless you wanted to comment on anything.
No, I'd say yeah. It's just a lot of the rest of this book is kind of jumping around a little bit, and then Johnny going to enlist the help of the Inhuman royal family to go investigate what's going on Mars and yada yada yada.
Yeah, Sue
and then brings us to that. So.
Sue fucking off by herself, getting caught up with the Mole Man.
Yeah.
This is a Fantastic Four book, and the Mole Man has to show up in his contract. And this kind of brings me to a point that I was talking about earlier that I said I'd get back to. The reason that I started to dislike this book is because I saw where it was going. And again, I've seen it done better in a book called Earth X, but they just try to shoehorn so many characters and so many callbacks and try and explain the story of so many different pieces of the Marvel Universe within 6 issues. It's not like this is a 6-issue miniseries that had, you know, parallel tie-ins with other stories. You know, you didn't get an Inhumans book where you saw that Ben Grimm was just hanging out on Mars. They shoved it all into 6 issues, and I feel like that degrades the integrity of certain, crucial elements.
Yeah. Hey, you're coming through a little rough right now.
Do you wanna restart the Skype call real quick? Maybe that'll. Or am I
Yeah,
better?
yeah, we can do that.
Oh, am I better, or is it still?
Yeah, it's still
Okay.
a little rough.
All right, give me 1 second. Doing it live, folks. Doing it live. Come on, Skype. It looks like Skype has shut down. Open Skype. Come on, Skype. Alright. I guess that was just bound to happen. My Skype was. Oh, hey, you there?
Hey, yes.
Better now?
Yes, that's better.
Alright, I guess Skype just decided to shut out because as soon as the call ended, my Skype just shut the fuck down.
Oh, jeez.
But anyway, no, we were into issue 4, so obviously Mo Man has to make his appearance, but he name drops this mystical orb that apparently Sue has been searching for, which we were talking about her saying that she was doing archaeology because it made her she was connected to her kid, so you can call that foreshadowing, but I don't think it was actual foreshadowing. I don't know that. How do I say this? Are you familiar with the quote unquote Marvel method?
The Marvel what?
The Marvel method.
I don't know it as a name, but if you explain it, I might know what you're talking about.
Well, it's the way that they write and draw their comics. DC is usually about six weeks out. DC always has about 6 weeks worth of releases ready to go on hand at all times.
Okay.
So if you miss a deadline, you still got 5 weeks to make it up, and you're gonna get chewed the fuck out, I'm sure. But Marvel usually is turning shit in the week it's going to press.
Oh.
So that makes it hard for me to look at some of these little notes and say, oh, well, did they just read the first issue and say, oh, okay, well, this has to do with archaeology, right, Mole Man? It doesn't feel like it was well fleshed out. Is all I'm saying, just based on the writing. Not that it's terrible, like I said.
The Mole Man part was kind of. I thought the Mole Man part was a little hokey too, but.
Well, I don't want anybody listening to think that I'm just trying to shit on your first choice of books after you've made such glowing reviews of mine. It's just, I'm gonna give my honest opinion of stuff, and this isn't a 5-star book. This is the kind of book by itself. Now, maybe like I said, when I read the other stuff, I'll be able to kind of understand what's going on a little bit better. I don't know, a lot more cohesive. That makes sense.
Kind of give us some time to kind of spread out and
right, like give all of these like overarching plots time to develop and time to simmer instead of throwing them in the microwave and nuking them for a minute and eating it like a hot pocket. I mean, is that a good analogy?
Yeah.
This is
no, I like it.
Like something like Lock and Key, like we talked about last night. That's the filet mignon with a loaded baked potato. This is a dollar. This is a not even dollar menu. This is a value meal from McDonald's. It's still like $8 to $10, and it's still filling and it's still good to eat, but it's not that filet mignon with the loaded baked potato. And I think that's kind of where we screwed up this week. I think we should have talked about this first and then that, because coming off the back of that, this just looks so much so much more amateur, and I hate to say that.
I know
Now,
it's crazy. And in my defense, I haven't read this story since high school.
oh no problem at all. We're definitely going to read some of my garbage tier favorite comics. I mean, what was one of the first ones we talked about? I haven't read this one, but the hamsters one.
Oh yes.
I mean, I'm sure that's going to be absolute dog shit, but I want to read it.
but that has, if it's not dog shit in the most wonderful way possible,
right.
then I will be severely disappointed.
Exactly. Um, anyway, let's go ahead and get into this. I don't mean to be such a fucking downer on it. It's a good book, don't get me wrong, and I love the Fantastic Four as characters. So whenever they have a series where they're the important people, I always appreciate that.
Yeah, I think you are gonna have to pull your screen share back up though.
Oh yeah, I do need to do that, don't I? Man, it's almost like you want to know what's going on the show and not just trust me on it.
Yeah, because who knows what you could be showing.
Oh man, I've got your nudes and your docs up.
That's it?
Oh yeah, just the nudes and the docs. We haven't got to the second frame yet.
Oh, okay.
But
well, you're welcome, ladies.
All right, yeah, definitely. And gentlemen, don't forget, and the CIA. The CIA needed this information.
Yes.
But
well, I mean, the CIA probably already has that stuff.
The next thing we see that kind of felt important to me is the reintroduction of a classic Fantastic Four villain. And this is what I was talking about. Like they're shoehorning so many familiar faces in. It just feels like they're just using them as filler instead of trying to actually develop their character. Because we really shouldn't have a backstory for a new villain every third page. And we haven't even gotten to the meat of it yet. There's like 3 or 4 more to bring in. But you got the Super Scroll coming.
Yeah, back. This is definitely the part where it gets like where it starts to get way too cluttered. Like they're trying to pack in like they had all these ideas they wanted to bring in. They're like, oh shit, we don't have enough space in these 6 issues to fill everything. Quick, let's do it all in a quick sequence.
Right. There's machine gun fucking characters, but the Super Scroll traps Reed and devises this plan to send him into the negative zone. But obviously that doesn't work real well, so Reed drags the Super Scroll into the negative zone with him. And it doesn't turn out too well because we have the Shi'ar and Ronan the Accuser making their way onto the asteroid just as Reed and the Super Scroll are getting their asses kicked in the negative zone. So not really a good day for our boys.
No. And so, in part of the reason the Shi'ar and the Kree are headed to the asteroid is they've detected a cosmic vibrational disturbance where the apex is at Earth, basically.
Right.
And that's why they're headed there.
And does it not bother anybody that Earth is always the center of the Marvel universe? I mean, New York specifically. I'm sure if you dug in deep, that the apex of the signal was New York. Let's give a shout out to Atomic Denny and Cartoon in the chat. How's it going, guys? Denny.
Hey, what's up, Denny?
Is actually responsible for the backdrop we're using this evening. They pull that back up real quick, and I haven't gotten the one with the ponytail up yet because I'm a lazy bastard. But Cartoon is actually responsible for the Church of Failure Avatar. So let's just thank both of those guys off the rip because they are fantastic at what they do.
Oh yeah, And Failure as the Pope riding a Transformer church is fantastic.
Guru Failure. Oh no, that's not what we want. Transform to the screen. There we go.
You good there?
Yeah, we got it. We fixed it right there.
All right.
Got it. Fine.
So now this I think is the main problem with the Mole Man appearance.
Yeah.
Is she literally just puts herself in a force field bubble and just kind of says peace out and leaves.
Right. Well, this is the first time you kind of get a clue as to what's going on. Now keep in mind this is issue 5, folks. This is the 5th issue of a 6-issue storyline, and we're just now kind of getting an idea as to what one of the main fucking characters is doing. Like, this is the first peek into the payoff of the book, and we're one issue away. So it's kind of like a cock tease, so to speak, because I'd really like to know what the end goal was and how they were going to accomplish it earlier than this, so that I have more than one issue to realize, oh, they did it. Cool.
And the fact that you said cock tease on the part with Sue Storm might have to entail her to put a hashtag #MeToo against you.
I am prepared for that. At the religious institution, she cannot take my money. That is sacrilegious, and I don't pay taxes. So, but eventually, reinforcements arrive because apparently the Avengers were at a wedding and they were talking to Reed Richards, and his signal cut off when the Super Skrull put him in a box and threw him in the negative zone. So they went to check it out because they're good people. But this is the first time that they've suited up and fought in a while. So you have,
and I love that Spider-Man is just chilling on the Hulk's shoulder.
Yeah, well, this is Professor Hulk, so they've they've been cool for a while. Spider-Man and the Hulk are kind of two peas in a pod, so to speak, in certain stories. You got Black Panther, you got Luke Cage hanging out there in the background, Jessica Walters, Ant-Man and the Wasp, well, Giant Ant-Man is what he is, Daredevil, Hulk, Spidey, and Captain America front and center to basically go up against the Shi'ar and Ronin. So I'm really kind of worried about this a little bit because based on the power level of everyone here, and based on the intergalactic cosmic scale of power that they're about to have to fight, they feel a little outnumbered. But obviously, they're going to hold their own until reinforcements arrive.
But that is one thing we've been shown little nods here and there. At least with the Fantastic Four specifically, Johnny and Sue. We've seen that over this period of time, they've developed their powers and gotten more control of it. Johnny can go into his plasma form to survive in space. Sue can filter just oxygen molecules through the water into her force fields and is able to breathe.
Right.
And so it would be safe to say that the other heroes as well have kind of honed their powers a little bit more as well at this point.
Well, you would think that, and I would too, but I still wouldn't expect any of these people to be, the first on scene in a cosmic event.
True.
They come in and lead up the rear. Yeah, I'll believe that, but it just I feel like it is a nice little nod though. But again, there's so many faces in these 6 issues, and it really kind of brings me back to what I was talking about with the wedding of the Fantastic Four, which we'll probably want to look at one day. Might have should have looked at it this week. I just didn't think about it early enough.
Yeah.
But they just shove so many faces into it, and it reminds me, and it might be kind of an homage to that. And if that's what it is, then I'll kind of take my criticism of it back. But everybody is in this fucking book.
Well, I mean, it is called The End, so.
Yeah, but there are like 15 The End books, man. We talked about this. How many ends do we need? But anyway, you get Sue Storm showing back up to the Strange Palace and bringing with her this artifact, and at this point we know it has something to do with their kids. So they don't really outright say it here, but we can infer that she's trying to use magic to bring her children back.
Yeah, it's inferred a little bit because she does pull out a book that their nanny or whatever used to read to their kids when they were little that talked about this orb.
Right.
And
yeah, and then
so we don't really know what it does specifically, but we know it has something to do with them.
Right, and you also saw Valeria with the runes when before they disappeared, because Sue was the only one that saw them or something, but we haven't quite gotten there yet. So, then you've got a further reunion scene almost with Ben and Johnny, and they find Reed in the negative zone, making mention that this isn't their first rodeo with the negative zone, so obviously Reed's going to have a homing device on him.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder, did the Super Scroll put that homing device on him? Or did he just swallow a microchip like a puppy? What are we talking about here as far as a homing device?
Or it's built into their suits.
Exactly. But the thing is like Ben said, well, he wouldn't have gone into the negative zone without a homing device. He got knocked out and put in a box. Like,
yes, I would just assume like the four on his suit has like some technology built into it.
Man, you really got a thing for Iron Man suits. Come on, his suit has to stretch to any shape. I don't know. He is the smartest man on the planet, but you think he's that prepared?
I don't know, just what I know of Reed, I would assume that would be something he would do.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you that. I think it was funny the way Ben said it, and the way it was set up in the story. But then you look at the actual logic of that. It's like, did he get it before he went in the box? What's going on here?
I mean, he could have snatched something like when he snatched Super Scroll before they fell in.
Probably, yeah. I'll take that. I'll buy that with $1. But then the end of the book, you have the entire fleet of Shi'ar and Kree, war vessels flooding in. It's over, y'all. We gonna die. We gonna die. And that pretty much takes us into book 6, which is the end of the end. I've been waiting for that joke for an hour and a half. We kind of pick back up with Sue Storm, and she's located the rest of the Fantastic Four. So this is the full reunion. The full reunion of the Fantastic Four. The first time all 4 of them have been together since the the breakup, so to speak.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. And she's explaining to them that she can't let them stop her because she wants to bring back their children. And
that Reed just kind of discounts it because he still at this point thinks Doctor Strange's abilities aren't actually magic, that he's just clever, basically.
Yeah. Well, he says that everything Strange does can be explained by science, and Strange explains to him that that may be true in some world, but that doesn't discount it. And
Yeah.
Sue's always been the more superstitious of the pair. I mean, even in Civil War, she assisted the resistance against Reed, even though she still loved her husband. Even though they love one another, they're pretty much a perfect couple in that regard. Because even though they don't see eye to eye and everything, they always, they don't ever let it take away from their love for the other, but they also don't let it stop them from doing what they're gonna do.
Yeah.
Unlike Ant-Man, Reed don't have to slap Sue up every time she gets out of line and a little bit mouthy. Old Ant-Man can't keep his hands to himself, but she basically just doesn't want them to try and stop her because she wants to use magic to save their children, and I can understand that motivation, and that's a good motivation. I just wish we hadn't had to wait this long to get it. I wish we would have kind of got when they were first talking about this with Doctor Strange.
Yeah, maybe a scene before, at least before she goes on this expedition, talking to Strange about this orb, right, and kind of asking him if it is a real thing and if it would work. And
right. Well, I mean, there's even a panel where and I think I pulled it up, where she was talking about faith being the only thing driving her.
Yeah.
The belief in the magic or whatever that could bring her kids back. I've also changed the scene, by the way. We're on the big fight scene on the ship. The Avengers have arrived to bring back up. The Inhumans are there. It's an all-out brawl. And this is all happening on the asteroid while Sue is attempting to, cast a magic circle in the back room and it not being bothered by this. I think that's pretty great. You got your cosmic super level beings outside attacking the fleet, trying to keep it at bay. And there's even a mention at a certain point that because communications were shut down and some satellite reception was down and stuff like that, that even Iron Man's consciousness was, his transfer was shut down. And that led me to wonder what would happen if his consciousness had to transfer from one suit to another because it got destroyed. Would it just ping until the connection was reestablished like a Wi-Fi device, or would he just be gone?
Yeah.
So there is a series called Iron Man: The End. I don't know if it's a one-shot or if it's like a 3-issue or a 6-issue series, but we can look at that and maybe that'll kind of answer that question.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
But it's just a major shit show, and you learn that all this has kind of been the mechanization of the Kree, but also that in the background Annihilus was doing shit in the negative zone. And this is kind of what I was talking about. There's just so many plot threads to try and keep up with. And then this magic thing happens, and they go back in the past, and they pull Valeria, and Franklin, and Doctor Doom into the future. And Sue explains that this is a giant paradox. It was always supposed to happen. And then Doctor Doom proceeds to get his ass beat for a little while. And then Galactus shows up.
Now, and you said this is your favorite. I think this favorite page of the whole thing.
I think art-wise, this is my favorite page of the entire series. Yes. I love Galactus as a character. He's just so outlandish. He's so big. He's just so he's just so freakishly fun as a character because he can be as menacing or as campy as you want him to be. Like here, he's projecting himself and just basically halting an entire fleet of invaders and saying, "You know what? Keep going. I'm gonna fuck you up."
Now, what did you think of the second Fantastic Four movie with their version of Galactus.
About my life. Oh man, I'd rather watch like Iron Man 2 or Thor the Dark, especially if we're gonna keep doing this. Like I figure we could probably have a movie night or something where we just talk about one of the movies or a couple of the movies or something. Or maybe some of the comic book store, like we did with World War Hulk, but maybe a little more organized now that we kind of have an idea of what we're doing. I'm gonna leave this one up for another minute. We can talk about this page. You know, they commenced to beat on Doctor Doom, and Doom escaped to the negative zone portal right before it self-destructs. So we know Annihilus is still in there, and Reed had to set the machine to self-destruct to trap Annihilus. But it pretty much explodes as soon as Doom goes in there. So you assume at this point that Doom's dead. And then, of course, there's the big reunion with everybody. And then there's the laughable gimmick about how there'll be like 17 members of the Fantastic Four by the time Johnny has his 7 kids or something like that. And I'm just like, Jesus Christ. Why does Valeria know the future all of a sudden? Is that one of her powers? I thought she was just like super intelligent. Like, how does she know?
Yeah, and it should be interesting to note that she said Johnny and Crystal are going to have 17 children specifically.
Oh yeah, because they're divorced or something at this point. They went through that too. It was another little homage to their previous relationship that started back when the Inhumans were first discovered.
Which I will say, I did also find that entertaining when he first gets to Mars and
he's
sees her, and he's like, man, that mask looks hot. She's like, it's ceremonial. He's like, oh well, like, it's sexy.
Talking to Ben Grimm, and like, she still wants me.
Which is just great, because that's one of my favorite things about the Human Torch is like that total like Chad attitude about him, where he's like, yeah, come on ladies, you know you want this. Right. And then, you know, a lot of the times just gets an eye roll from a lot of the characters.
Well, you know, that brings us to the end of the book, and it's like, you know, every time one story ends, and then at the end it's like another begins, and you see Doom in the negative zone having killed Annihilus and taken his rod of power or whatever, and now he's in control of Annihilus's hordes, and you see Super Skrull in the foreground, everybody's chanting Doom, and I'm like, now I'd be interested in reading how this plays out. But I mean, that's the story. You know, if we're gonna
the reunion part was pretty touching. I'll have to say
it was, but once you knew it was coming and it was so quickly thereafter, I feel like it was a lot more rushed, because you really only got the sense of Reed missing his children and blaming himself for that within the first issue or two, and there was so much going on that you weren't really able to have him figure out that maybe Sue was pursuing some kind of artifact that she had kookily talked about before she went on this archaeological dig. You know. Also, another thing that I don't like is the "May I speak to your manager?" Cersei Lannister haircut on Sue Storm.
Yeah, I didn't like that either.
You know, she is definitely looking. When did Game of Thrones start?
I have no idea. I never really got into Game of Thrones.
Well, I know that Game of Thrones, the season with the short hair, was definitely after 2007, which is when this book came out, I think. Let me fact check that real quick.
Back to the Google.
No.
Unless the CIA can tell us.
I'll go to the source, man. I'll go to the comic. 2013. So maybe Cersei Lannister's man hair did exist then. I don't know. I doubt it. It was what, season 4? Game of Thrones. Cersei Walk of Shame. That's season 5, episode 10. And that was 2015. So, would there have been? I don't know that there would have been promotional material about that out that
early. I have no idea.
Well, it's just so interesting that happened so close together. I mean, don't you think?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because the Cersei Lannister haircut came about in 2015, but I mean, Sue Storm is very reminiscent of Cersei Lannister in this comic book, if you ask me.
I'll have to take your word on that one.
I'll pull up an image for you.
Okay.
Let's see. I'll even save it and put it up on screen for a minute. And maybe this is just because I've watched this recently.
Now, did I just see one with Hillary Clinton's face photoshopped onto it?
Yes. Yes, we did. I'll save that one too. Put that one back on there. Alright. Maybe I should put that one up first. That's pretty great. I mean, I don't even care about my original point. There we go.
Oh, the stuff you find on Google.
Oh man. There we go. Make sure that's coming through on the stream here. Oh yeah, nice and large. But no, this is from an episode where the religious institution of Westeros has captured Cersei Lannister. Let me just fill you in a little something about me. I am a what they call a lore nut. I really enjoy world building and backstories, and that's why I really kind of got into Marvel Comics, because of the shared universe idea that you can learn. Well, actually, I don't want that as big. Let me. That's not what I intended to do. That's not what I wanted.
Okay, yeah, I definitely see what you're talking about there.
Yeah,
There's definitely a similarity.
Yeah, I mean, look at that. That's just two on the nose for me. But I don't know. I could be wrong. Who the hell knows? No, I mean, if I had to rate this book, it would still be a solid 3.5 out of 5. I just, like I said, it's not a 5 out of 5 book. I feel like there's a lot of just stuff crammed in there that just muddles the whole thing into something that's a little hard to follow. It's kind of like the same problem that I had with World War Hulk, with the difference that the Fantastic Four, have such a rich history, that they had that problem in 6 issues, not 60.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. I'd probably say like 3 3/4, just because I found like kind of like some of the campiness of it kind of made up for some of the lacking in the storytelling for me, like as far as like overall enjoyment of actually reading the story.
Oh yeah, it's definitely not a bad afternoon worth of reading. Like, don't get me wrong, you won't feel like you wasted your time if you read it. Cartoon in the chat just dropped in. That's the concept art for that scene, talking about the Cersei Lannister thing. But oh, did he send a link? I don't see a link if you sent one. Sometimes it'll ask me to approve them, but I don't see it to approve. So he may have sent a link, but if he was just riffing on that, that was funny. I don't know.
But
Like I was saying, it's not a bad story. You're not gonna hate yourself for reading it. Um, it's just like I said. I feel like they were trying to do too much with too little.
yeah, and I mean, for an hour, maybe maybe two, it'll take you to read through it, depending how fast you read. You know,
Right.
it's a good enjoyable story. There's enough
Oh,
there's enough there to make you enjoy it. Uh, that I think overshadows kind of the clusterfuck of some of it enough that it's enjoyable.
I feel like I'll just pull this back up for the point. But if you if you do read it and you do sit down and you actually read through it, take in the pages. Like with a
Oh
normal
yeah,
comic book, the separation and the gutters between the panels. I believe that is the industry term, the gutters of the comic. Um, but just the way a normal panel is set up is much easier to take in. So seriously, if you do sit down and read it, just sit down and take in the artwork and see if there's any like little Easter egg characters that you can pick out if you've never read this before, because they do a lot of homages to a lot of characters that are never mentioned by name, and a lot of
yeah.
costume elements and stuff like that. So it's not bad. Don't let my negativity about it like ruin the experience for anybody. I still think it was a good read. I feel like it was a little too full coming off of something like Earth X, which we will talk about in the future. I thought this for some reason was a 2007 book. Um, that's where I was at with it. But apparently it was a 2013 book, so I'm an idiot, and this definitely makes sense as to why it feels so crowded. But I mean, the art's really good. Um, I like the fact that there was white racism just 6 years ago. um,
See, and I'll have to say the I the thing that really stands out to me is the whole family dynamic between the four of them in this setting. I thought that's definitely the highlight of this story, is kind of that natural drift apart and then how they slowly kind of come back together
right, and
by the end of it. I think that's really kind of like the other that's really the story here, and everything else that's happening is just kind of the catalyst for it.
right. Well, I think that as a comic book, it succeeds in making you want to finish the story and possibly dig into more of the end story. You can go back and read other comics. So as a book like of that nature, I feel like it succeeds. I'm not really familiar with any of the uh, any of the creators, Mark Davis, or Alan Davis, Mark Farmer, or John Calise, I think KL or K yeah Kalisz. I can speak.
Yeah, Khalees.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um, but Alan Davis apparently did the story in pencils, and Mark Farmer just did the ink. Not just did, but did the inks, and Kelly's was the colorist. But I'm not really familiar with any of these guys. I think the art was pretty stand up. Um, maybe nothing special. I don't like the paneling. I really did not like the paneling. I think that might just be the old man in me.
Yeah, it's a little weird.
But other than that, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It's not a 5 out of 5 hail failures. Three and a half, 3.5 hail failures. You know, mid range book. Nothing wrong with it. Nothing stellar. Just halfway halfway decent comic to spend an afternoon reading that you don't have to worry too much about if you don't want to, or it can lead you into something bigger. So,
Yeah, I guess we'll find out in the coming weeks.
yeah. Well, maybe not. Just depending on we
Yeah.
should actually discuss this a little bit later off air. What direction we want to go. If anybody wants to leave a suggestion, You can add us on Twitter. You can comment it on the videos. You can say it in the chat. We definitely took World War Hulk as a suggestion, and so far that was the most difficult week we've had.
Yes.
He just meant that the Hillary Clinton Photoshop was the concept art. So fantastic. But we'll figure out what we want to do. Next week, I do want to announce that the current plan is that we will be back on Saturday at 10 with Deadman, Jesse, and Becky for Lock and Keys Volume 3 and 4. So that ought to be a lot of fun.
And just a quick little teaser. This is where that story really starts to get crazy.
Right. It's a halfway point. But it is definitely something that you guys won't want to miss if you enjoyed the first episode. If you missed it, definitely check it out. I consider it one of the most fun episodes we've done so far.
Oh, definitely.
So those two are great. Check out their channel. It's linked in the description of the previous video, and will be linked in the description of the following Saturday's video. What do you want to do next Sunday, man?
Oh, I don't know.
I think I had an idea earlier, but
okay.
What about we look at try a different little Sunday format for a show, and look at the top 10 of certain events that just happen repeatedly in comics. And
I can dig it.
Gulf City Cult of Krill in the chat for the last couple of weeks has been requesting some DC and some Batman specifically. But you and I have talked, and we both have a fancy for the Green Lantern comics. So why don't we just take all three of those things and do the top 10 times that Batman has had a power ring?
I like it.
Okay. We're not going to be going over the full story necessarily. We might do a quick summarization on each book that these stories come from, or each story that these stories come from. But I know for sure that one of them is going to be the Blackest Night saga. And I think that was over 100 comics in the Green Lantern story arcs, so we're definitely going to read all of that by next week. But we'll touch on the part where Batman gets a Green Lantern ring and kind of explain how we got there. But I think that might be something we can do next week, is just look at 10 times that Batman has had a Green Lantern ring, and maybe we can have a separate rating system for these shows and apply a rating of good or crap to to these stories, and what we thought of them in comparison to one another.
Campy or dramatic.
Right. Right. I think that'll be kind of fun. So we'll call it that.
No, I like it.
The 10 times or however many we can find at least of Batman having a power ring. We'll just call it the times that Batman has had a power ring, or if there's too many, then we'll just pick out certain ones. It ought to be fun. I'm sure there are lists out there.
The at least top 10.
Yeah. Well, the as many as we can find.
Or the up to top 10.
Right.
There we go. The up to top 10
right. We'll
times
have 13,
Batman has got it.
It'll be fine. It'll be just like my list on Twitter, when I did those. But yeah, that was good. And I enjoyed this. I enjoyed going through this. So, we will definitely have to go through something else again. I think we just maybe need a little bit more time to build up a reservoir of things we want to go through and how we want to approach them. Because I think this Batman Green Lantern topic takes 10 books off the list by itself. We might discover. That's what we could do. We could do one of these episodes like we're gonna do next week, and then the one that we mutually have the same feeling about, the one that we mutually enjoy the most, is the one we'll look at for the next Sunday episode. Or do you think
I
that,
like.
or do you think that, or maybe a future Sunday episode, but not necessarily the next one, so as to
Yeah.
not
Well,
repeat the topic too much. But
yeah, we'll hammer it out.
yeah, we'll come up with something, you know. But yeah, if you guys have any suggestions or anything, we appreciate everybody who stopped in to check it out. The CIA, absolutely the CIA, Atomic Denny,
Yes.
cartoon. Anybody else who maybe swung in to give us a listen for a minute or two. Um, you know, I thank you, Ayrton, for being here. Obviously, it's not like I have you strapped in the garage or anything, and
no,
not in your face.
No, not at all.
Right. No, that's not what's happening. I don't know. I think we should probably go ahead and start getting wrapped up. I'll get the song queued back up if I can figure that out here.
Well, again, as he's doing that, thanks everyone for listening while Church is boomering this up. Thanks for having me on the show, Church. It's always fun.
I mean, I definitely enjoy this. Like I said, I like being able to just kind of riff on comic books for a little bit every week. It's relaxing, it's fun, and it's definitely a break from the everyday goings on of the online world, where sometimes it's just a black pill. Sometimes, man. Sometimes just being online, you're like, I just don't want to live on this planet anymore.
Yeah. Hashtag Sweet Meter of Death 2020.
Right. I want. What was the? Oh, God damn it! I have to delete this and make a new one. I want the plot of Final Fantasy VII to be real.
Again, not a gamer. I'm missing the reference.
You don't? Oh man, Final Fantasy VII. That was literally the plot of it. There was a. Oh God damn it! No, there was a meteor summoned by Sephiroth towards Earth to kill everybody.
Ah.
Yeah, he just wanted to kill the planet, and I kind of want that to be real now.
Yeah.
You see this stuff on Twitter and in the news, and you see celebrities walking away from convictions, and you see just some of the stuff. So I think it's really a fun thing to just sit down and talk about something I enjoy for a couple hours every week.
Yeah, have a couple beers, nerd out for a couple hours over the weekend. It's good.
Have a few drinks and sit down and raise hell about things and nerd out on something and just go off on a rant about how this guy put too much shit. There's just too much shit in this comic book. Just standing there, get this comic book off of my lawn. But yeah.
Please, somebody clip that.
Oh, speaking of which, there's a little hidden Easter egg in the first Lock and Key episode. If anybody wants to kind of sit through that and see if they can find it. Anyway, thanks again, man. I'm gonna go ahead and play us out and stop this before I get us in more trouble than I already have.
That's probably wise.